Hello everyone and welcome to Shell Point Today for Monday, October 19th. I'm Adam Brown and here's what's happening on today's show. First, we'll take you to the community thrift store on McGregor Boulevard to experience all the preparation and decoration that recently took place in time for the holiday season. Then Terry Kolath will introduce us to the Southwest Florida Symphony director, Dianne Kabaretti. Well, there's a lot that's happening around Shell Point this week. First, we begin by reminding you that there will be a fall dance tomorrow night in the Grand Cypress Room at the Woodlands. The theme is A Night in the Orient. As you step inside this Asian-inspired world to dance the night away, you'll enjoy hors d'oeuvres and music from Kelly and Shelley as they play all the songs you know and love. The fun starts at 7 p.m. and there will also be singles seating available. The cost of the event is $10 and you'll want to make sure you're all signed up. If you're a member of the National Mahjong League, then you'll want to make sure you are a part of Shell Point's inaugural Mahjong party on Wednesday. Doors will open at 12:30 at The Cove, the community building at the estuary. You can get a table for 4 or come as a single and be matched up with others. Light refreshments will be served and the cost is $5 per person. Attendees of this month's Aviation Club meeting will be putting on their investigators' hats to explore what really caused the crash of Eastern Airlines Flight 375 in 1960 shortly after takeoff. Resident Dick Gallagher will share from his wealth of experience on the Lockheed L-188 Electra and will analyze the factors involved in the crash. The meeting will take place in the Social Center on the island at 1:15 on Wednesday. Looking ahead to this Thursday, Shell Point will be holding its fall open house. There will be increased traffic and activity on the property during the event from 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. Please note that the shopping bus will not be running Thursday due to the open house event. As we are now in the fall season, our thoughts often turn to the approaching holidays. Out at the community thrift store on McGregor, there is no shortage of holiday thoughts as volunteers have already been busy decorating and putting out holiday displays. Let's take a look at the work of Santa's busy little elves.
Ho, ho, ho from the community thrift store.
Welcome everybody. Today is the day we are putting out the holiday goods just for you. We have everything you could possibly imagine. We have small trees if you have a small living space but you still want to be decorated. We have billiards ornaments for the billiard aficionado. And if you have a sleigh that goes through the sand down here in Florida, we even have sleigh bells for you. All this is at the community thrift store. Diane?
We have many elves helping us today. Elves, say hello to the camera.
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays!
We will have Christmas goods out at the thrift store now through Christmas. We have snowmen. For those of you that want to read that Christmas novel, got your comfy little things to put on your sofa. Also have cute little crafts. So please think of coming to the community thrift store before going out shopping in Fort Myers.
It's never too early to start thinking about decorating your place, so come out to the community thrift store in Miners Plaza for some wonderful goods and some happy company. Thank you for joining us. Happy holidays.
And now Terry Kolath is going to introduce us to the Southwest Florida Symphony director, Dianne Kabaretti. He has an amazing background as music director of the Santa Barbara Symphony and conductor of the Israeli Orchestra. He shares with Terry his love of the universal language of music and talks about the experiences of performing on stage and the energy that comes from the audience.
Hello, I'm Terry Kolath, manager of the Academy of Lifelong Learning at Shell Point. I also work with John Boren and Randy Woods for the Fine and Performing Arts concert series that we have at Shell Point. And that gives me the privilege of introducing you today to our symphony director, Dianne Kabaretti. Thank you for joining me, Dianne.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
We're delighted to have you here. Now, you have such an amazing background. I can't wait to share a little bit more about you with our residents. Music director of the Santa Barbara Symphony, conductor Israeli Orchestra, and now Southwest Florida Symphony. When you're standing on stage, facing your musicians, does it matter where you are?
No, absolutely no. Music is, thank God, it's such an universal language. And my career brought me to very exotic places, Far East, South America, many countries in Europe that I normally wouldn't go to. But just because of working opportunities, and the music world is quite small, even though it sounds strange, but it's a small community and your name is, there. And I've been in so many places, that I wouldn't know the language. I speak pretty many languages, yes, but some I don't. And nevertheless, even if I'm in Tokyo or in a place, I don't know, in Portugal or whatever, and I don't speak the language, I can immediately communicate with the people. And that gives you the sense of you're at home. We're doing the pieces that we all know. If I'm going to play a Brahms symphony, the musicians have a long history with that piece. I have my personal experience with the piece for at least 20 years or so. So we come with a point where it's sort of you meet someone out of your neighborhood, out of your country maybe, but you have so much in common. So this sense of being at home is something that it's quite difficult to describe, but it's very authentic. And the one thing that I like is to really work in beautiful places. So that's for sure. And that's what's brought me here.
That's right. Well, they say music is a universal language. How wonderful. How wonderful. Now, you have a whole season here under your belt. This is starting your next season. And we have a partnership, Shell Point Retirement Community, with the Southwest Florida Symphony. That's really important to us.
It's definitely very important to us. It is an essential part of our activity, our music making, is reaching out to people that might not, make the drive to our normal performing arts center. And we are so thrilled that Shell Point has such an accomplished facilities that can accommodate our needs acoustically, space-wise. We love coming here, and it's really added a lot. I've been here already a few times. The hall is packed. Beautiful energy comes from the audience, and that's something that people might not know, but it is so important for a performer on stage to receive this energy from the audience. I mean, it's very obvious that in sport, that's the case. Normally the teams that play, when they play in their own stadiums, they perform better because they have the audience, the fans background. That's very much the same in music. And so if the hall is like empty I've been my life, touring. I was touring Scandinavia, whatever, 25 performances in different cities. Some of the cities were not that well attended, and that makes a difference in the performing, because you want to give the best out of yourself, and this extra push from the audience makes a huge difference. So we love coming here, obviously.
That's wonderful, and we have such an appreciation for classical music here.
Indeed.
Music in general. Well, let's talk a little bit about our 3 concerts that you're going to bring to us. Holiday Pops, how much fun is that?
Absolutely, yes. and I want to say that for the symphony, for the Southwest Florida Symphony, the Holiday Pops concert is extremely busy and intense program. We run it in 5 different locations. Yes, including bringing the show north to the States in St. Augustine. They booked us, so we are not only representing our own county, but we are offering this show also out, and based on our reputation, they booked us. We're having 2 shows, as I said, St. Augustine, and one here, and one Barbarmen on Sanibel Island, a few miles away from here. So it's really an important activity for us. We love the program, and of course, there's nothing more beautiful to connect the festivity, the celebration with good music. So this is we're looking forward to really beautiful performances and packed houses.
Very nice. And then our Discovery concert.
Yes, which is also something that we offer, and I know we have a lot of fans here in Shell Point for that. And that is a unique opportunity for people who might not be that familiar with story. Every piece of music has a history. A composer just not write a symphony just like that. It takes a while. Sometimes it's months, sometimes it's years. You know, Brahms was working on his first symphony for 4 years or so. You know, there were composers along the history that were easy writers. You know, Haydn wrote 100 symphonies. They're a bit shorter, but you know, Beethoven was struggling with just 9. You know, so, and then this 9 became the standard. You don't want to, because Beethoven died after the 9th symphony. So did Schubert. So did Bruckner. So did Dvorak. So sort of 9 became the number you don't want to exceed. And
this is it. I want to
right,
live longer.
actually 8. Yes. So to come back to the discovery, we dedicate one program to know a little bit more of the history behind the music. And really one of the fascinating piece in the repertoire is Beethoven Eroica Symphony number 3. A long history also related to Napoleon Bonaparte, who was that time the hero of Europe. We're talking about slightly after the French Revolution. So the piece, you know, Beethoven, who was a big humanist and the very first composer to get away from the church power, so to say. He's the very first, what we call today, freelance musicians. He would not write for the prince of that or for the bishop of that. Beethoven writes because Beethoven wants to write, and he couldn't care less about I would say, the regime and he admired Napoleon exactly because of that, because he took away the power of the church and things like that. Then he was at the same time to see that Napoleon actually, you know, put himself as an emperor, and that somehow put it back to, so I actually don't like that much. So at the end, he actually went away from the dedication to Napoleon. So this is an incredible story which also reflects the time of history in Europe. And so we want to share a little bit with the audience, and my colleague Leif Bjalland will do an excellent job of telling the story behind that. And also what brought Beethoven, what language does he use? The themes that we know from the symphony, maybe they are coming from somewhere else. Maybe you use that in a song 20 years before, in a string quartet or something. You know, composer, they don't recycle, but they influence themselves. You know, they're not only influenced by other composers, they themselves influence other pieces that they will write later. And very often, even Mozart or whatever, Shostakovich or Mahler, they would use a theme that they used maybe 20 years ago in a different context, in a different key, slightly different length, slightly different harmony, whatever. So we will tell the story of the Eroica.
Fascinating. And then we have the symphonic folklore, Mendelssohn, Defala, and Copland. And we'll talk about that in our next interview, because we're so fortunate that you're going to come back in the Academy of Lifelong Learning and talk before this concert.
Absolutely.
We are so delighted to meet you. Delighted that we're a beautiful enough place to draw your attention that you would want to come here.
That's just a place that's hard to compete with, I tell you. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
And we look so forward to continuing our partnership and enjoying your concerts.
Thank you so much.
So look at your concert brochure, Music in Motion. You will find more information about the 3 concerts we've talked about today, and we'll have more opportunity to get to know Maestro Nir Kabaretti.
And now it's time to take a look at today's happenings, Academy news, menus, and Village Church connections. Right after this, listening to the Words preview from David Howenstein.
Welcome to this week's edition of Listening to the Words, featuring what's fashionable and what's not, and how what's inspiring means a lot. Our landscape manager, Steve Morton, compares Venice to Shell Point in his Floral Fashionista. We learn about Shell Pointer Eleonora Harmachek's career as an interior designer. We wonder at an artist short on stature and tall on creativity in a story written and read by Terence Flannery. Listen carefully to a large list of life lessons from the ever-popular Unknown. And veteran contributor to this program, Russ Miller, remembers being inspired by Mickey Rooney to put on his own show. If you hear something you didn't appreciate in full at the first listening, remember the half-hour program is aired twice each hour, all 7 days this week on Shell Point Channel 12. If a friend or relative would like to hear Listening to the Words, every program is available at www.shellpoint.net/listening. This is David Howenstein thanking you, my listener, for listening to the words.
Hello and welcome to the Happening segment of Shell Point TV. I'm Caitlin Van Scoy and I'm here with Bev Chanley, and we're going to let you know all of Monday's activities. We start at 8 o'clock with men's match play tennis. That'll be at the Woodlands tennis courts. We move to 8:45 for virtual bowling. That's in the Resident Activity Center. Billiards are being played at 9:15 in the Resident Activity Center. And Lollygaggers Paddlers will head out for their outing from the kayak storage at 9:15. Also at 9:15, pottery with instruction available is down in the Island Tunnel in the Pottery Studio. At 10 o'clock, we have men's match play tennis. That'll be at the tennis courts at the Woodlands. At 10 o'clock, we have the Suzy Q heading out to Matanzas on the Bay for lunch. You do need to sign up for that. We move to 10:30 for Disciple Men's Bible Study Group in the game room at the Woodlands. At 10:45, Table Tennis Playing Clinic is down in the Tarpon Room in the Island Tunnel. And our last morning activity is at 11:30, a Health Connections class, Ball Edition, that's in the Health Club and currently full. Here's Bev to tell you all about our afternoon.
Thank you, Caitlin. We're going to start with a 12 o'clock Mahjong game. That's in the Sable Room of the Woodlands. And we have a Health Connections class at 12:45. Senior Self-Defense, that's in the Health Club. At 1 o'clock, we have the Mystery Date Community Thrift Store Fashion Show in the Grand Cypress Room. You do need to sign up for that. At 1:15, we have Advanced Table Tennis. That's in the Tarpon Room down in the tunnel. 1:15, Samba, the card game, will be at the Resident Activity Center. And our last 1:15 activity is Tone Chimes, practicing in the Osprey Room on the island. The train room will be open for tours from 1:30 to 3:30. And we have a 1:45 Health Connections class, balance and mobility training for beginners in the Health Club. It's currently full. The Beady-Eyed Bead Club will be in the Oak Room of the Woodlands at 2 o'clock. And at 3 o'clock, we have another Health Connections class, Pilates Stretch. That's in the Health Club on the island. The Shell Point Singers will be rehearsing in the choir room of the Village Church at 3:15. And at 5 o'clock, you'll find the singles table at the Crystal Dining Room available if you're interested. And then we have duplicate bridge in the game room of the Woodlands at 6:30, and that wraps up our Monday lineup. We're happy to see you here today, and we will see you back here again tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Terry Kolath with your Academy information for Monday, the 19th of October. We have iPad apps at 10:15 in the Manatee Room on the island, and Anatomy of Words at 10:30 in the Oak Room at the Woodlands, and they welcome everyone. At 1:15, Store Your Personal Records on Your Computer continues in the Technology Teaching Center on the island, and at 1:15, the First World War continues with Part 2 in the Social Center of the island for those who have signed up. At 1:15, our iPhone Talk versus Type course begins in the Manatee Room on the island for those who have signed up. I'd like to tell you about some new classes coming tomorrow. Paul Neighbors of Rosemont will be teaching Understanding Your Computer. Professor Adrian Kerr will bring us the Story of China, Part 4, and Making Labels for Your Christmas Mail List will be presented by Al Kaplan of Oakmont.
Menus for Monday. In the Crystal Room, the Crystal Platter is roast beef with French onion demi-glaze, a baked potato, and mixed vegetables. The dinner special is Old Home Cooking Night for $11.95, and the soup of the day is tomato. In the Island Cafe for lunch, the special is a grilled chicken breast with special sauce and onion rings for $7.75. The dinner special is chicken artichoke flatbread for $8.75, and the Palm Grill is closed on Mondays. All menus are available 24 hours a day at www.shellpoint.net.
Hi, welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm Andy Hawkins, the senior pastor of the Village Church. And you know, one of my favorite comedians when I was growing up was Bill Cosby. I remember having a 33 RPM album, which I listened to over and over again. I had his routines almost memorized. And the title of the album that I had was, Why Is There Air? One of the episodes he describes involves the time he went to college. He attended Temple University as a physical education major. And then, of course, as only Bill Cosby could spin it, the story gets, embellished. He tells about dating a brilliant young woman who was a philosophy major, and she would go around verbalizing deep philosophical thoughts and would say things like, "Why is there air?" To which Bill Cosby would reply, "Well, every phys ed major knows why there's air. There's air to blow up volleyballs, air to blow up basketballs." You know, we do kind of take air for granted, don't we? We are surrounded by it, we inhale it, we live because of it, but we rarely think about it. They say fish are not aware that they're wet, so accustomed they become to their environment. It's only when they're taken out of the water that they become aware of water because of its absence, and we're the same way with air. We take it for granted unless we're deprived of it. You know, the LifeQuest program here at Shell Point identifies 6 dimensions which encourages personal and community well-being. They include the natural environment, the physical, the emotional, the educational, the social and community, and there's the spiritual. And the Village Church is invested, as you might imagine, in the spiritual for obvious reasons. However, I like to think of the spiritual dimension as air, and I like to think of the other 5 dimensions as the parts of an automobile tire. Without air in the tire, the parts of the tire are damaged and eventually will be destroyed as the car is driven. Without the spiritual dimension, the other aspects of our lives lose their purpose and meaning, even their function. We live in an age in which we take for granted the air in our tires. I'm sure you remember the days when automobile tires weren't so reliable. If you were to take a road trip back in those days, it would not have been surprising to have a flat tire. They were not all that uncommon. Today, however, we hardly ever even think about the air in our tires, and blowouts are fairly rare. We do, however, still depend on the air in our tires, and if we experienced a blowout, the results might be catastrophic, especially if we were driving 70 miles an hour on an interstate. We human beings are spiritual beings. That is the way we have been made. And yet so often we take for granted that dimension of our lives. Our spirits are the air in our tires. Without a vibrant spiritual life, the other dimensions of life become problematic. You know, one of the things I learned as a university professor was that professors were always trying to develop models as metaphors to explain various kinds of phenomena. That's the case in nearly every field, especially in the social sciences. It's as if one professor wants to say, well, reality is like this, and then he or she would describe a model. And another professor would come along and say, no, reality is more like this, and then he or she would describe reality using a different kind of model for their metaphor. And that's how a lot of university professors spend a lot of their time, debating and arguing about models and metaphors. And so here I go presenting a model, a metaphor for describing a dimension of reality, the spiritual dimension as air in a tire. But you know, that model or that metaphor from a biblical perspective is not all that far-fetched. The idea of the spiritual as air is not something I conjured up on my own. I just didn't make it up out of, out of thin air. The Bible uses 2 words for spirit. And those words are both used to describe the human spirit as well as the Spirit of God. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew word is ruach, and the word literally means breath or wind. In the New Testament, the Greek word is pneuma. And guess what? That word literally means breath or wind, just like the Hebrew word. So the idea of the spiritual as air is not original with me. It is a thoroughly biblical concept. And by the way, the Greek word for spirit, pneuma, is the word from which we get our word pneumatic. And pneumatic refers to anything in which air or another gas is used under pressure in a mechanical tool or object. In fact, back in the early days of the automobile, we used to call the wheels pneumatic tires because they were filled with air. So the spiritual dimension can be understood well by the concept of air. Even air which supports and enables the other dimensions of life, like the natural environment, the physical, the emotional, the educational, the community, and the social. Like air in our tires, we do tend to take the spiritual for granted. But maybe that's not the best thing to do. Maybe we ought to become more aware of the spiritual dimension. Maybe we ought to think about it consciously And maybe after all, it wouldn't be such a bad idea to ask.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. Return tomorrow when Emily Reese will talk about the Walk to End Alzheimer's event. Caitlin and Bev will talk about the bake sale that will take place at next week's Hometown Hoedown. And Rich Nation will meet with Dan Filgreen to talk about promoting the Hoedown in a special segment you won't want to miss. Until then, this has been Shell Point Today for Monday, October 19th. I'm Adam Brown, and on behalf of everyone here behind the scenes at SPTV, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you again tomorrow.